pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. How are you? Very well, thanks. Good. It says here that we will have a moment of silence, and I think over the weekend we had lost many, some of the highest casualty rates of the war. So let us have a moment in silence for those who lost their life, put their lives on the line, and for their families, and for us. Thank you. Public comment? Is there any? I don't see anyone coming forward, so we can go right to our Dan Gallagher and Gary Delius from Open Cape. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good.
Thanks for having us back.
I'm happy to have you back.
I want to give you a couple of minutes. This also Art Gaylord is coming in the door from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute.
How are you?
Another board member of the Open Cape Corporation. First, let me introduce myself. Say I'm Dan Gallagher. I'm the CIO of Cape Cod Community College in Real Life. As a volunteer, I am the president of the Open Cape Corporation. With me are two other board members, Gary Delius, who is also the MIS director of Truro, and Art Gaylord, who is the director of computer systems at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. All of us volunteers on the Open Cape board. I wanted to give you a quick update on what's where we stand with this process.
Can we just take 1 minute, since we now have cameras in the room, if you could just give a 90-second overview of what Open Cape is.
Certainly. Open Cape is a project started as a concept about 3 years ago as a result of a lot of us here on the Cape who found our needs for telecommunications services were not being met in both the availability of service, the capacity of the service that was available, and the affordability of what we were getting as service. We decided that the only way that the Cape's needs were going to be met was if we built that ourselves. So we've spent 3 years and about $250,000 of seed money, some of it from the EDC here, about $50,000, $150,000 from the John Adams Innovation Institute, and contributions from Woods Hole and the college, and others. To do engineering studies, marketing studies, all sorts of analysis about what is required, what is our need, how can we address it, what would it cost us to actually build a network to meet our needs. And we've concluded a lot of that work at this time, and we are now prepared to seek funding to build a network that's called a middle mile broadband backhaul network. I like to explain it as water mains for people, that we all have faucets in our homes and pipes running through our house, but there's a water main on the street. You're not going to get water service in your house unless the water main is delivering water to you. Well, we are the water main that's going to deliver a very large pipe of internet access, basically, to the region to serve it both internally around the region, but also out to the broader world through Providence and Boston. We'll do that by three components of a system that we are going to build. The three components of the system are about 300 miles of fiber optic cable to be run through the Cape, generally down Route 6, all the way from the canal to Provincetown, but with what are called redundant loops to ensure that if one pole were to be knocked down, everyone doesn't lose service. We would run it also down Route 28 to Falmouth, back up Route 28 all the way to Orleans. We'd also have a component on 6A to back it up there, as well as some microwave to back up the system and provide for a public safety net for police, fire, and others to use as a dedicated circuit for them. So there is fiber optics of about 300 miles, a microwave component of basically radios and antennas that provide a backup system and a public safety network. We choose that largely because it will survive a hurricane or be easily repaired following a hurricane, and that's a big focus of ours. And the third component is a co-location center or data center. That's what we're here to talk to you largely about today, but that sort of pulls the whole system together. All of those water mains that we're building out there need to connect someplace to, a reservoir. And think of that co-location center like a reservoir where people put servers that provide services to towns or businesses around the Cape. We designed that, and frankly, we pursued this building that you have here largely because of some factors that we're very interested in. That's, again, related to the hurricane scenario. You want a high location, away from the water, that's very sturdy in its construction to survive a hurricane, that has a lot of backup power should the power go out on the Cape. So that's why we sort of come here to the county looking at that building that you have, the communications building up on the hill. So that's sort of what Open Cape is all about.
Right. Now, some people, just to put one more point on it, some people watching this might say, well, I have Comcast or I have Verizon, and I have my, I think, internet access. What are they talking about? But this is really the matter of redundancy. If that goes out, there's another backup. And also the capacity on the Cape for larger institutions, say, such as Woods Hole. This is something that's going to enhance economic development, educational opportunities, these sorts of things, because we can download information, we can get a lot of things off the web, but to upload and transport a lot of information, especially when it comes in terms of grants or studies and being competitive out there in the global market per se, we need this type of infrastructure to be put in place.
Yes,
people who aren't involved in business in that way don't actually see that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we like to frame it in terms of opportunity, capacity, and affordability. The opportunity doesn't exist for everybody residentially. Gary's here from Truro, and there's a very active voice in the Truro area and all in the Outer Cape, really, about folks who don't get Comcast or DSL service.
And I happen to live out there as well.
Who absolutely want it, and frankly, if you're going to participate fully in the 21st century economy and civic engagement, you need to have that access. We intend to, and are required by the grant we're seeking, actually, to deliver what is called an interconnection point into those areas so that a company can provide service there at a reasonable cost to get service to those folks. So that's the opportunity issue. The other one is capacity. Art over at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution have needs for tens of gigabytes of broadband access, unlike our homes.
Right.
They need that. They need it to be in redundant paths, and from his perspective and mine as well, at the college, it needs to be affordable. What I pay at the college for our internet access, which is insufficient in its capacity, is also very highly priced, frankly. And if we were living in the metropolitan Boston area, I'd probably be paying about a third of the cost that I'm paying now. We want that level of competition on Cape Cod with multiple providers, because we're building what is called an open access vendor-neutral network. The incumbent providers can lease dark fiber or lit services from this network. New providers can come in and offer maybe unique applications, a wireless mesh network in Provincetown, or they may deliver a full-blown cable service to a town. What we want to do is offset the barriers to entry for companies like that, and that's what's going on here. Is that I live in Mansfield, as I told you earlier, and I have Comcast and DSL and Fios all available to me. There is constant competition from those companies calling my house, offering me better deals, lower prices, faster speed. You do not have that here. The only way you're going to get that competitive model of better services, more services, cheaper prices for Cape Cod is to build this backhaul network that we are intending to build.
Perfect overview. Art, you want to just add one?
The other aspect of this is public safety and emergency. Public safety all the way from the obvious police and fire use, but also in terms of hospitals, remote care from ambulances, communications. Gary likes to talk about how that if you get picked up in an ambulance in Provincetown, you can be out of communications. The ambulance drivers can be out of communications until they get to Hyannis.
That's right.
That could be up to an hour, and that's too long to not have interaction with medical personnel. The obvious case of a major hurricane, what that could do to our infrastructure, and part of the design of Open Cape is that it is to be survivable during a hurricane, and also easily repairable by local people.
Okay. All right.
If I could add one more thing to the general overview of that as well, Sheila, that for the 3 years we've been doing this, we have been meeting with the Selectmen's Association, individual boards of selectmen, the School Committee Association, the Town Administrators Association, the Police Association, the Fire Association, to get their input of what is their need. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity.
Absolutely.
Probably pretty unique, frankly, in the area, in the country, for a grassroots regional effort to help define what our telecommunications infrastructure is going to look like for the next 50 years. We are helping to decide what that is going to do and what our needs are. Not an individual profit-making company that answers to its shareholders, not the community. we are really driving this effort, and I think that's really unique. That is once in a generation opportunity that we're involved in here.
Okay. Well, thank you. All right. So now that brings us. Do you have a question?
I was just going to say, if you could talk a bit about the financial model to build it as well as to maintain it.
Okay. Our projection of the cost of building this system, the three components that I described earlier, is $40 million. We intend to apply for what is called a Broadband Technology Opportunities Program grant. This is part of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, or commonly called the stimulus package. There is $7.2 billion in there for the purposes of expanding broadband access to unserved and underserved, and we would be described as that underserved, communities throughout the country. There are a lot of folks like us in the same boat. The notice of funding availability for that grant was issued on July 1st. We are required to submit our grant by August 14th. Fortunately for us, we've been working on this for 3 years. Folks who just came up with a good idea on July 1st are not going to make it. There's too much involved to do this. So there's a $40 million grant that we will be applying for to build this system. There's a requirement for a 20% match. That can be cash or in kind. We have, and part of the contribution may be the in-kind that we arrange with you for the building, but we have other arrangements made to meet that 20% requirement as well, and I can go into a little detail when I go into the update. But that's what's required. We have done a lot of the analysis, whether with the building that we're interested here in the county, the communications building. We've had construction engineers there to look at the building and provide us with quotes as to what it would cost to repair the building, modify the building, and update the building. But as well, we're proposing to put that co-location center into the ground floor of that building. And we had another company that has looked at it and done all the engineering to tell us what are the requirements, what are the costs. So we have real numbers for the construction of this. The process that we've used is we used an RFI process as our competitive. How are we going to decide? Because the model that we're using is federal money is really being used in this process. Again, as a capital investment to offset the barriers to entry for last mile providers, additional companies that can provide you with services, right? So the government wants this to be spent well. Nonprofits as well as government entities can apply for this money. We, as Hope Cape, are a nonprofit 501c3 corporation. We can apply for the grant. But our intention is to apply for the grant, be the awardee, and own the physical assets of the network. So that's the fiber optic cables, the microwave radios, all the equipment in the co-location. We would own that. We are going to license the right to operate that and build the network to a private company. Okay? A profit-making company, because our belief is that no one should get any of this money who cannot present to you a sustaining business plan. How is this going to be sustained, funded over a 25, 50-year period? And frankly, the only way that that's going to be done, without going back to the government trough every 3 or 5 years, is through private profit-making activities. So that company will be encouraged, and we will hope that they will make as much money as they possibly can, expanding the marketplace here in Cape Cod. They will pay us, the owner, a licensing fee to cover some basic operating costs that we have, but largely for us to aid the region in exploiting the network to its own benefit. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
Things like we've talked a lot about, regional umbrella services, regional GIS, regional learning management systems for the schools, public safety networks, all these kinds of things. Even, frankly, a region-wide phone system where everyone becomes an extension instead of paying phone bills. Mm-hmm. All those things become possible by this. And us, as our corporate purpose, is to aid the region in exploiting that capability. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So that's sort of the financial model that's being used to do this. I can announce here today that we, in fact, went through an RFI process, began in May. We put out that RFI to companies that are really capable of building and operating these kinds of things.
Request for information.
Yes, a request for information, yes. And we used that as our competitive process to select a partner, that private operating partner. We sent it to companies like, some of these you may recognize, Comcast, Verizon. Because, again, as long as any company can live with our open access, vendor neutral, not proprietary, they can apply. And if they had the capability, we sent the RFI to them. The others you may not know are Level 3, is a big national company.
Yes,
RCN Metro Optics. RCN operates in Boston and around the region, really, throughout New England. The others we sent it to were NSTAR, because they potentially could run it as well. Light Tower is another company. That's the former National Grid. So we sent it to those kinds of companies. We got about 12 responses back Some of them unsolicited, actually, that we did not send it to. But it was a small group we sent it to, but we got about 12 responses back. We limited that to 2 finalists. We spent a lot of time with those 2 finalists to determine how can they best meet the needs of the region. And we selected this week, actually, RCN Metro Optics as our operating partner. So RCN Metro Optics will bring what is a very large experience in this area, a very large footprint, and a very great interest in making this a business center for its activities. A press release will be issued today jointly by RCN Metro Optics and Open Cape Corporation announcing that partnership. I think that's really good news for the region. This is a company that has a lot of experience in this. Now, RCN, so that everybody knows, RCN is a larger company that has a couple of divisions, RCN Metro Optics being one of them. This is a company that builds the backhaul, that water main, right? But they also have a component that is a residential service, for video and phone and all that stuff that you may have heard of. They operate in Boston and around the region in New England. So this is a commitment with RCN Metro Optics to build the water main portion of this and operate it. We cannot yet determine. We're hopeful that the parent company will bring the residential service once we've got active in this. But that's for further discussions with them, obviously. So that's good news for us. So we've got a notice of funding availability, an opportunity to get the money. We know what we need. We know how to apply. We've got a private operating partner to go into this with us who brings all sorts of expertise. We're meeting with them frequently now to work out the details. Where are we going to go? Where is the fiber optic going to be laid? We know generally the path we want to make. So many of the town's administrators and selectmen, for example, I sent an email requesting from them, send us a list of all of your town buildings and put them in priority order for connecting to this network. Now, we're not going to build a network for each town in the town. What we want to do is come up with a couple or 3 places in each town where we can connect to them, to bring them into this regional network. Do you see what I mean? We've made commitments to connect all of the emergency shelters, which are all schools. There's about a dozen of those. And we're also making a commitment to connect all of the libraries into a common network. So that will get a lot of them. But we also, if we're going to pass by nearby, or if we could alter the route of where we put the fiber optics to connect to an important firehouse or police station or town hall, we're going to try to do that as part of our design. We won't be able to cover them all, but it gives the town a greater opportunity to connect to the broader network, if you see what I mean.
Excellent.
Okay.
One thing, just so it's clear, is that in choosing RCN as a Metro as a partner, we're not excluding, because of the open access, any of the other companies, either the ones who responded that we didn't pick or people who didn't respond. They still have the same access to the network as anybody else. So as we encourage RCN to look at providing residential services, we're also continuing to encourage existing companies and future companies that may not even exist yet to do the same.
And connecting the towns together would be what we call a municipal area network. So towns would be encouraged to connect up their major buildings into their own network and then join that to us so that all their infrastructure can be connected into the regional area network. That's what we would see as being able to provide services such as permit management, GIS services, shared assessor data, all the kinds of things that all the towns need, but don't have access to today because they're all their own fiefdoms. Then that would also be what Dan was talking about for a regional phone system. It might be possible at some point in time to be able to simply dial a 4-digit number to reach Truro Town Hall from here, or from any other town within the system. Every other place would be just an extension on a much larger phone system.
That would be a regional phone system for municipal.
Exactly. Not for private. No.
So this fits in very nicely with what we see as our strategic plan going forward, as far as being able to be more relevant and helpful, and to provide these types of services to our towns, which would relieve them of that financial burden. Okay, that's terrific.
So one of the critical pieces of our system is a regional co-location center. We've had some discussions with you. We appreciate you sent us a letter of intent to look at this further, obviously with no formal obligation at this point. But we have been able to analyze the building, its structure, its square footage and layout, and it fits perfectly with what we think should be the co-location center. We want to pursue that further with you. We've had, again, an engineering study by a contractor who would renovate the building, as well as a co-location company and our partner RCN, who has looked at it to say we could build a data center in there. So we have that data available to us, and we need to move to a more formal either negotiation of a 25-year lease. And why do I say that? Because if you're going to apply a match in the grant process, the generally accepted accounting principles are what are used for defining something as match. So that in those rules generally say that a capital lease is acceptable as a match. And in order for something to be a capital lease, it really has to be like that 25-year period. If it were shorter than that, it would not be accepted as a match.
20 years wouldn't be acceptable?
Typically, I would say 20.
They may accept 20 as well, but what we're trying to do is align everything with the warranty on the network as well. All the fiber optics, all the equipment that will be placed in here, to try to align everything into a 25-year. And so the partner will get a 25-year, what's called indefeasible right to use. We'll have a 25-year lease, and we'll have a 25-year warranty to align all of those things. Mm-hmm. That's sort of our goal. Mm-hmm. So that's a requirement of the grant in order to. Now, we are estimating, though we have an appraiser appraising the building and what is the value of a match. If you were to give us that, what would the value of that be over a 25-year period? And it's round figures, it's $1 million. Mm-hmm. So we have to come up with $8 million in match. This would be the county's $1 million match contribution to the process. Mm-hmm. We are acquiring the other $7 million through other actions. So. That's how that applies, and that's why we choose the 25 years. That's why we have to have those kinds of things in place. So what would the county get in exchange for this? Well, we're intending to put $5 million of the grant money into the renovation of that building. Mm-hmm. And the way we envision it is, and this, everything comprises to be elevators for ADA, all those kinds of things are met by the design. The ground floor would be a regional co-location and data center, about 2,000 square feet of basically server rack space for use by public and private entities. And there'll be different rate structures for profit-making, non-profit-making government entities within that. There'll be deep discounts for them. The first floor, Open Cape intends to have small office space in there, probably on one side of the first floor. But the other side of the first floor could be used by the county. You have trailers now that you're leasing for office space. You could potentially eliminate those and put them into a nicely renovated area. And also there's a third floor on there. It's not as big because it's got the slanted ceilings, etc. But there's still usable space up there.
Very usable.
We would renovate that as well, potentially with a conference room. And maybe the county would be able to use that space also. But frankly, as we looked around to the different service agencies that might use our network. So let's take the Clams Library Network. Mm-hmm. If we provide their wide area network services to them, it kind of makes sense for them to consider going up into that space. And you would have to look at that. Are these government entities? What else can go on the third floor? I don't know. That would be up to you to decide.
Right. So that would be under our.
That would be under your purview as to how that rolled out. You may want to maybe you have a need for all of that.
Could be.
That's what I would assume right now.
Right.
Yeah.
I would too.
But that's up to you, frankly, how you do that. But that's how the county would benefit in a couple of ways, obviously, from this. And this is why you're contributing $1 million asset, basically, into this process. Is one, the county is helping, as you say, in your strategic plan to help the region pull together this regional umbrella services model to help the towns provide better services at lower cost. Mm-hmm. You can't do that without building this infrastructure. So everyone benefits from that as well. And then you get the practical application of a renovated building that you still own, frankly. Would be obviously looking for a renewal option on the 25 years. I'll probably be long gone, but we like to build these things in. But we like to have these things built in. But you'd get that renovated space. Again, it'd help you with your space needs. And you'd have a real asset up there, obviously, rather than an empty building that you don't have the money to renovate any other way.
Right.
So that's sort of what we're proposing. Nutter, McLennan, and Fish is our legal representative. They've been providing us with great support at no or very low cost, because, again, they see recognize the value for the region in this. Mm-hmm. So we would want to enter into some type of a formal negotiation, if you agree, into us leasing that building from you under a long-term agreement of 25 years, and sort of those principles I just described being the foundation of what the agreement and lease would be. I don't know what other requirements you're under, and you certainly can tell me those. But a process needs to begin because we're under the gun of applying by August 14th for the first round approvals. They then review that for about 30 days, come back with another second round process of very detailed information. And we can't just say we might get a lease on this building anymore. We have to say we have a lease arranged,
Right.
or if we don't think that we can do that, we're going to go looking for a property to buy.
Right.
And frankly, if from our perspective, we could go buy a building and a more modern building and prepare it probably cheaper. But again, this is a regional collaborative effort of support, public partnership, that everyone sort of wins in this scenario, I think. And so that's why we choose to go this direction first.
Well, it also allows us like first access to what it is you're doing. So in some ways we have input and use and maybe even a little bit of control in regards to county affairs as to how that's going to roll out. So I see that. I do know that there would be some sort of contingencies written into this lease, and there's also restrictions.
Before you could even start negotiations, we have to do an RFP process.
And how long does that last? Can we have this done by...
Typically, you have to have that on the street for 3 weeks, I would say.
So we would need to put that out on the street, like, by today.
It's not going to be on the street
or
today.
tomorrow.
We have to put together the specifications. You have to put together the lease, the document. So there's some work that needs to be done.
Right. Yeah. How soon do you think we could do that?
I can't foresee us getting it out before mid-August.
Why would that be? Why would it have to take that long? I mean, I know that there's work to be done on this.
Well, I'm going on vacation for one thing, but I can't see it being out before.
So that's not in time for them.
That may basically eliminate this as an option.
Yes.
No, it's not. You just said that you don't even know whether you're going to be in the first round until August 14th. So
the
second round is through September 14th, 30 days later. No. So I think within that time frame we can know. But
I only say that we have to go under the supposition that we will, in fact, be in the second round, and I think that we will.
Right.
Everything indicates that we will.
Right.
And for us to secure these, we can't wait for a potential RFP to come out, and well, then what is the end game on that? And then decide if it doesn't work out that we have to then go acquire a building. We either need to, in the short term, be assured that this is moving forward for us, and we have a very high likelihood of achieving it, or we have to go look for a building to buy.
Right. We also have to detail what the match is in the August 14th application.
Well, I can't change Mass General law. There's nothing I can do about that. We have a requirement to go. We have two requirements. One, Mass General law would require any public facility to enter into an RFP process to enter into a lease, period. End of sentence. Second, in the charter, we have to go through a process with the Assembly of Delegates when we are going to enter into a long-term lease with another private entity before we can sign a lease with a private entity. There's no two ways about it. We've been through this with the county hospital property when we did the assisted living facility. It's not a complicated process, but it's one that has to be followed.
Mr. Doherty, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
Well, no, I just wanted to say that I think if we could look at a timeline, what your drop-dead date is in terms of having something, and work backwards, and then see how we can do it, how we can get it done. And if you are on vacation, how maybe somebody else could step in and maybe do it.
What do we need?
But I'd like to see a timeline. If that's it, how can we actually meet that by meeting the requirements that we have to meet and doing it in that fashion? We're not going to do that right at this moment, but I think we need to do that in the next day or two, at least develop the timeline.
I think a letter of support detailing the opportunity for an RFP, which could result in blah, 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 would be acceptable for what we need for round one. Seeing that it will take longer to get something that legally is a binding relationship between us both, and is also, you can't sort of like open your kimono too far to say, okay, we're going to put on RFP, and maybe the winner will be Open Cape. It has to be something looser than that, but it needs to be something also that shows that we are moving in that direction, if that's possible.
We have some precedent with regard to AmeriCorps housing, the Highland Center, for example, where we had put out a letter of support for their activity without that was contingent upon the completion of let's say, the legal process?
No, that's not our facility. It's the National Seashores facility. It's backwards. You know what I'm saying? It's the opposite.
Okay.
This is our facility, and these are the steps we have to do.
No, I get that. I do get that. But I think that one of the things that we're trying to do is how can we legally and legitimately show our intent to support this activity, and I believe that we can make it a matter of record that we, for example, we could take a vote that it's our intention to go forward, and that you could have on the record that we are actively pursuing with optimism that we would come to a conclusion that would reach this.
You can't presuppose the outcome of an RFP. That would be a very bad thing to do.
Can we back up just for a minute, and if you could just tell us exactly what you need by August, what's the date?
August 14th.
August 14th. What do you need from us by that date?
Obviously, we would prefer to have a lease in place.
Right.
Because if we're going to score, again, we have to come up with $8 million. We've identified $7 million of that already. We need the additional $1 million to come up with $8 million.
Right.
We thought this could be that $1 million. And if we can't get that and secure it in the August 14th first round application, you can't just, we think we're going to get this, isn't going to be acceptable to them.
Right.
We either have to drop the total amount and value of our grant request, which is one possibility for us. If we go and buy a building, for example, we might be able to drop the total value of the grant request, because we're spending $5 million to renovate this building. Okay.
I can't imagine you'd be able to close on the building in less than 30 days.
We don't have to.
Well, we don't have to. We can lease it.
We wouldn't need it for the match.
Right. See what I mean?
I see. So
we don't have to match we drop the total value.
Short of actually having the lease in hand, what would work for you to keep this relationship going?
Well, I think significant progress towards having the lease. I understand those requirements. An RFP process has to go through.
You can't enter into negotiations on a lease before you do the RFP process. Obviously, that's skirting the whole intent of Chapter 30B.
Yeah. The other possibility for us is to raise more than, and we've considered this, that we raise more than the required match. Frankly, to overcome this time frame thing, that if we can come up with other matching components that qualify, again, we'd have to spend some time trying to figure this out, to come up with
that aren't necessarily a building, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Something
and
else
we
that
do,
would be
yes.
$1 million, right?
Well, we have to make the 20%.
Right.
Yeah, that's the requirement.
Request a waiver, which is a sort of like a definite.
Right.
So I think what Dan is saying is that we have pretty much 7 locked up. If we could find another $1 million, then we wouldn't need the $1 million from the county to meet the 20%.
In the August 14th.
It still is very beneficial because you get extra credit, so to speak, for going over 20%.
Right, and we could still man you with some sort of letter of intent that if all goes according...
You can't use something less than a lease. You can't use anything less than a lease.
Is that a question?
I think.
See, if they were a municipal entity, this wouldn't be a problem because we could enter into an intermunicipal agreement. It wouldn't be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue here is the word lease. As soon as you use that word, there are certain conditions that are triggered for Chapter 30B and our charter.
Yeah.
So if we can have an agreement that does something, that might be something that we can do in much shorter time frame. It's this whole lease. The lease thing puts a crimp on it.
How about if maybe, I'm thinking not to specifically state the building, but that we are willing to enter into an inter-county or agreement to provide a facility?
Allocate, appropriate facilities.
Allocate resources.
Allocate resources to support this going forward.
Value.
And I think as much as you can do within the legal constraints that you have, obviously, a new letter of intent, for example, to say the county intends to create this capability. It must go through these following processes, which will initiate immediately with a dead, because you know how long you have to have it out there and how long it takes to make the decision.
Well, I can go back to this. I think we could have the lease in place by mid-September. I think we could do that. I think that's doable. I think mid-August, that's impossible. It's just not doable.
Well, I mean, again, we can look at ways that we might be able to get our match up over 20%. We've already secured pretty much $7 million, and we'll have to look at that to see if that's possible. And anything we can provide them as documentation that you are going through this process now will obviously be helpful. But if there's a constraint of law or other things,
we can review. We can go back to the federal government, the people who are issuing this, and ask them precisely what they
will they accept a process is underway.
You guys, the 501c3 is it a partnership or a?
No, we are a 501c3. We are just licensing the partner to build and operate the network.
You're licensing the partner with RCN as your partner, right?
Yeah, your lease will be with
I'm trying to see if there's a way to establish a partnership between Open Cape and the county. That way the county's not really leasing anything to anybody because we are one and the same entity.
Well, that was a strategy we had discussed early on, that you would go to the table with us along with RCN as a partner rather than just as a client.
Well, why don't we do that? That's a good idea.
Now that could be something that we can probably do sooner rather than later.
Because
what would be required?
Appointing them as a...
we need a piece of paper that says the Open Cape group and us as a partnership.
It'd be like the Arts Foundation in a way, where we create them as the representative for that type of activity.
Yeah, like naming them as a county
public-private partnership.
No, it has to be a little bit more legal than that. It has to be
Bob Troy and I have to sit down and talk to Dan about it.
We need to have. It's a little bit more. I think a little bit more legal and formal than the Arts Foundation, but. It would suffice, would it not?
Private partnership.
It could potentially. We'd have to talk, obviously, with our law firm, but also with the partner that we've selected, because they'll really want from us rock solid. They have 25 years access to that ground floor, and so the arrangement would have to be such that we have the authority to lease that space to them. For example.
But sort of what I'm doing now, Dan's buying some time, so that we have a partnership, and the details need to be worked out maybe in the future, which may involve a lease, where we have some time to deal with that issue.
Okay,
but. If we've got, I've got a couple of technical questions. If we've got legal right.
Well, we haven't actually. I'll need to know because sometimes it's easier to just have the lawyer talk to the lawyer instead of you and I getting in the middle of it. So
I have a meeting tomorrow. It's Michael Scott is the legal rep,
and ours is Bob Troy.
So I haven't talked to Bob. I'm discussing this with him tomorrow. So.
We'll talk to Bob today and tell him, and then you'll give Dan his contact information and all that.
We'll try to work this out.
Have you done an RFP before to get active tenants in that building?
We would probably, beside you guys, we'd probably use the space for either the health department.
But you haven't, like in the past couple of years or so, issued one to see if anybody was interested.
No, we've had some talks about maybe putting a commission up there before this idea came up. It's a little small. It's a little small for what we would use it for the commission.
And another reason we're sort of we need to make decisions is because we're going to have to terminate all these fiber optics someplace, and we need to know where that's going to be as part of the network design and all the engineering, getting rights of way and all those things that we have to do. And if we had to change midstream and say, it's not going to work here.
No, it's a great location.
It's a great location, and it's a great partnership, and and I think it is a win for everyone.
Well, it advances the county's goals.
Exactly.
Okay, great. We'll go in that direction.
We will. And when? All right. So tomorrow, the two lawyers will speak, and then we'll find out what we need to do, and if we can get it to you,
we can work that out.
Yeah. It sounds like we need just one little piece of paper. Hopefully, it doesn't get too.
Right. And then we'll go through the process we have to go through, whatever that may be.
Okay.
The technical question that I had is you mentioned the underserved part. The great concern was that having the pipe the same size going out as coming in. In order to support, let's say, the growth of this. Is it the intent that that the pipe going out would be the same size as far as capacity?
Yes, it's a symmetrical system.
Okay, that's important.
Yep.
The capacity that RCN is talking about installing is almost unimaginably large.
Okay, is this going to replace whatever communications work you have at Woolly now, as far as the access?
We will use this, yes. But they're talking about, on the backbone of it, running, the thing will be optically switched instead of electronically switched, which means you start dealing with wavelengths of light and how much information each wavelength of light. They're talking about an initial configuration of 40 wavelengths of light, with each one having a speed of 40 gigabits per second.
And I know that means a lot to you.
What that means
That's essentially the amount of data.
let's see.
I guess that's like warp speed.
Yeah, that is.
Well, moving at light speed.
It's roughly 400,000 times what you would get from a DSL or type Comcast connection, and that's per pair of fibers.
We're looking at 288 fibers.
The other two questions, and these have come up in different towns, is the interwiring, or among the buildings, was something that Comcast had promised to many of the buildings early on. I haven't seen any evidence of that happening. It seems like the success of this, in terms of a communications network, needs to have some attention spent on that. Is there any support for that as you look at it? Because there is, in my opinion, a need for looking at the specification for the highway, if you will, and then taking a look at the specification for the interconnect, so that those are consistent and symmetrical with what so that every point within the let's say within the local area has the same ability for access to the main spine. So, Are you helping or recommending what type of specifications the individual towns will have, so that when they make their selection, that will be helped out?
The engagement that we have and the obligation that we've committed to for the towns is, again, the emergency shelters and the libraries, and as many as we can to connect at least 2 or 3 points in the town. What we don't want to do is make a decision for each town on what they want to do in terms of their wide area network connecting all of their buildings. Because frankly, if you look at the different towns, like Barnstable has, for example, they're going to build a fiber optic network. The same is true. Plymouth has one now. Mashpee has a wireless network that they use microwave connections, basically connecting all of their buildings. And they've sort of made those decisions within the towns themselves. We don't want to dictate what it will be, but again, we will, what the purpose of our company will be, the nonprofit. We'll have a couple of employees. We aren't going to be a big company. We'll be aiding those towns in making those decisions for the further connections to connect all their towns. If they don't have the expertise in-house and they want to seek us out, or we'll actually be encouraging them to seek us out, to help them in making those decisions.
Right. The issue for me is the interface, because the interior network decisions, as long as it meets the town's needs is one thing, but the interconnect, to have a consistency throughout the system.
That will all be specified.
Okay.
And we actually, sort of what we've decided is that, because we've kind of talked about this a lot, the towns don't necessarily have the expertise to, for example, let's say we ran fiber optics into the town hall, and we said, here's a fiber optic connection. Now you decide what you want to put in there for a switch or a router to connect to that. We'll probably manage even the piece of equipment that we put in those 2 or 3 buildings per town, so that they don't even have to worry about it. All they'll have to do is plug their cable from their local area network into it, and we'll manage that device,
right,
so they won't even have to worry about it.
Okay, all black box.
Yep.
Okay, and then finally, when all these systems are proposed, I have a great concern about the protection of the PEG, network, and
it's completely separate.
Okay, so the thing that had come up within sometimes, I think Barnstable has streaming. This would provide enough capacity for streaming if they were to connect their the government network to it. And I think that this is an important issue for those of us who want to make sure that the community has access to viewing what their local officials are doing in the public meetings.
Yeah, that's basically the Comcast proposal that's currently out there today. Is they in all their local contracts they talk about PEG and they provide those services, and they have to provide an interface for those services. They are also offering to the towns to use the Comcast licensing fee to build their own iNets, municipal iNets, which is a Comcast product that takes the signal back to the Comcast head end. what we've had some discussions with some of the towns to do is, instead of going with the INET proposal, instead build your local area network, your municipal area network, and connect it to this broadband system. Then you can send your data any place you want. It doesn't have to go to Comcast head-in. People can view it by downloading it off your website. They can view it on their television. It's all the same. It's just sending IP information across the internet. And it doesn't impact Comcast's ability to deliver the same responsibility for PEG services that they're under today. But we believe, based on something that someone once said about if you build it, they will come. If we build the regional area network, and we provide the access for GIS, and we provide the access for permitting, so that permits enter the system much earlier than they do today. When a person goes to a town hall to get a permit, they actually would be going to a regional website, and when they pull that permit, it also begins to trigger the activities to Cape Cod Commission for their oversight of that permit process. That'd be a big win for everybody. If we build these kind of capabilities into this system, working with the commission, with the county, then we believe the municipalities will say, we got to hook up to this, because there's significant value to us, and by the way, we'll be able to connect up all of our various buildings. Will everyone want to hook up their harbor master's office located 5 miles away? Maybe not, but they will have the capability to talk to it by wireless now. So they get still high-speed, symmetrical interface to that facility, as well as every other facility in their town, should they choose to do so. And we will help them make those decisions.
But I want to make one big distinction that people should really definitely understand, is that we are the middle mile answer. We are not the last mile provider. There'll be other companies or your own town will provide those services. We are not a franchise agreement for video services. That's a completely separate process that cable access committees handle. Now, does this infrastructure that we're laying offer the possibility that there could be another competitor come into the marketplace to negotiate franchise agreements with the towns? Possibly. Is there an opportunity, because they'd all be aligned on the same date, that all of the towns of the Cape could negotiate as one entity? Possibly. And those could be good things with regard to video service and all those kind of things that the towns are looking for. But this could this infrastructure support that? Yes. Are we open to that idea? Sure. But we are not in that process. We're not involved in that kind of activity.
Right, that's not your ultimate outcome. Pat, you want?
When you spoke before, a couple months ago, when you gave us your update, you mentioned that in order to make this work, you had to have infrastructure on the other side of the canal.
Yes.
Is that still true, and is there a plan to do that?
Yes, and once you get to the canal, we are actually going to run 288 strands of fiber optic cable all the way to Providence, or somewhere. We've actually made arrangements with a group called Ocean in Rhode Island that is similar to us, trying to do something similar, and are applying for a grant as well. And our grant and their grant become more powerful in the application process by us coordinating our activities. So we are working out the details of a location where our fiber optic cable and their fiber optic cable would meet up. There are a lot of advantages to doing that. So we are going to go to Providence, and we're also going to go to Boston, probably via Plymouth and Brockton. To get into Boston. That's our plan right now. So we're building all of that as well, because again, it doesn't matter if we can build everything we want on Cape Cod. If we can't go anywhere from there, it doesn't do us much good. There are many, many other benefits to us doing it that way, because frankly, you look at Fall River and New Bedford that have 17, 18, 19% unemployment. Those communities need to get engaged in the modern economy to create jobs in some of those factories along 195 and 24. We're going to be passing right by there, and our intention is frankly to loop off like 48 strands of fiber in each of those cities for them to exploit. Like we are doing. They don't necessarily have a group like us that's taking the lead on this, but they will as this becomes obvious to them, and they'll be able to benefit as well. So yes, we are building that as well as part of this grant.
Do you have any expected operational date in mind?
It would be probably in 2000. I mean, we'll design the network to bring on as much as we can, as fast as we can. But we're looking at completion times of about 2 years once we have the money. And I think they're going to roll that money out pretty quickly, frankly. So I think, in 2011 we'll be complete.
And how is that grant money looking? We were thinking, you were saying that at one point you thought maybe it was like being concentrated more into the Berkshire area.
Well, that's within the state. Part of the process is once we get through round one, and they say, this is a good reviewed grant that's going forward, a couple of things happen. One, we have to provide a lot more detail. But two, the state gets to weigh in. And that's the governor, and he's going to use the Massachusetts Broadband Institute to provide an assessment of what his priorities are in the state. and we are one of those priorities.
Yes.
Western Mass is probably the top priority for him, but we are probably number 2. And so he will obviously check our box that we are an important priority for the state, and we'll go forward with that. The Massachusetts Broadband Institute is focused largely on Western Mass, where frankly 32 towns have no broadband at all. But we are working very closely with them to make sure that we are working in concert with them, and anything we need that we ask them for, they provide us. But I think they're looking at us as being a fortunate thing for them that they have a group locally who's taken this on, that they don't have to deal with it.
Right. Okay.
That's been their response back to us so far. Let us focus on the western part of the state because you guys already got your act together.
Okay. So that's where that weight all of a sudden shifted, or it felt like it shifted, because they're behind.
We're maintaining a very close watch.
Yes, because he did assure us verbally to our face that the Cape was definitely on that.
Yeah, we still need that
track.
That portion of the bond.
We'll keep reminding him.
Yeah.
So
the other question is, any estimates about job creation?
Well, we actually have to provide numbers, which we're working on now, of in the construction phase, how many jobs does this create? Because, there's a crew of 5 out there and a police detail and all that stuff laying the fiber optics, right? Renovating the building. These are real jobs in real time. Then there are operating jobs after that someone has to operate and maintain this network that are created as part of this. And then there are what we like to talk about also as a big factor is what is the economic impact? There are studies out there that say, you can get significantly more growth in your economic activity and economic development by having this widely available. And that's really what we think. The Cape has a lot of entrepreneurial spirit type people, and they like this sort of thing as part of their business planning and development, and we're hoping that that's a big factor in the future. And again, one of the comments we've made in the whole grant development process was that don't look at just, yes, paving the road's important and put somebody to work today, but let's talk about tomorrow's jobs too. And we like to think that we are not only today's but tomorrow's jobs. Largely, again, this is a 50-year solution, kind of generational impact that it can have for us, for Fall River, for Plymouth. I think that's all there.
There's unforeseen realities, I think, that are in our future with this. And people will be able to, as opportunities, you're allowing an opportunity to become available for people to think outside the box. And it is a global economy now, as much as people want to kind of pull that back in some ways. And people on the Cape can now compete beyond the borders of their town or even the Cape region, whether it's with their art or their service or expertise or whatever it may be, or even their business to attract people to come and visit. So I think it's great. Plus all the educational opportunities where universities and classrooms can be extended throughout the region, and students.
Yeah, even with my college hat on, we have plans there. For example, the college is the pandemic overflow site. So if we have a pandemic, which everybody got reminded of that recently with the swine flu issue that came up, that the plan is that if that happens, the college will close, and a lot of those people will go there. Well, how are we going to connect the college to the hospital's data system so the doctors and the nurses can do their thing? That's built into this project. Right. We'd love to see a regional learning management system that is common to all of the K-12 schools and the college. There's something called Moodle that we're looking at as a product for that. We'll run that in the regional data center and service all of the towns and and the college, jointly, so they all use a common system. So that's just my college hat. A couple of the applications that we envisioned for this. Right. So there's all sorts of benefits.
Right.
We know how much the 1800s, the impact of the railways, and whether the railway went by your town or not, made all the difference. Similarly, in the 50s, the highway system, when they did that, if you got hit by, if there was an exit at your town or not, that made a big difference into what happened to your town. Well, this is the equivalent for the 21st century. You have to have this infrastructure. I mean, part of the way I think of it is I want the Cape to be the equivalent, have the same services for networking, information exchange capacity as metropolitan Boston or metropolitan New York. We need to be first class without having to have everybody pick up and move there. And so if we get that, then that's what sort of drives the future for the economic development.
Any chance that the president's science rep or the advisor that works for you can help with this process?
I don't know if he will help directly in this, but we do. But there are people. There are actually There are people in the White House who are aware of this project from some personal contacts that I've had before they were in the White House. And of course, Senator Kerry and Kennedy's offices and Delahunt's offices have been very much.
And the state legislators are very active.
All of them.
Do we need a vote to enter into a partnership so that we can move forward
to
with the
authorize,
letter?
Bob Troy and I to develop a partnership document. Yeah.
Well, I would make that motion.
All in favor? Aye. We're done. Okay.
Thank you very
Get
much.
this done as fast as possible, and all will be well. That's great.
Great.
I'm excited.
Thank you very much.
Good.
We appreciate it.
See all of you. Thank you.